Damn, Jimmy, this some serious gourmet shit.
Howdy, what up, y'all? This is Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor Jones Rafa. Welcome to another episode of, well, actually, it's technically the first episode, but not really. Today we're going to be doing a new thing I like to call some gourmet shit. Basically, it's going to be the name of my deck building series. So, yeah, we're just going to be doing some deck building, some deck discussions on some gourmet shit. So yeah, I actually have a name to the series finally. So to kick things off, we're going to do like basically my most favorite claim, which is Megacolony. Alright, so this is what I call Toolbox Megacolony. Now I know Order Megacolony is the way to go at the moment. It's a premium format, but if you want something that has more of an interesting taste to the clan, I feel like this is the right thing to go. This is a experimental build that I'm doing right now, and so far it's getting some decent results. Like I said, it may not be as strong as Order Megacolony though, but it's like a decent alternative because I do feel like we do need a decent alternative. So, what's the goal to this? Well, basically it's pretty simple. You know, like in that job interview thing where they ask you like what your strengths and what your weaknesses is, and then like the whole purposes of it is like despite that you have weaknesses, you're supposed to turn those weaknesses into strengths. Well, basically that's what I'm doing. You see, like Megacolony throughout the whole V series has obviously had like some of the worst luck and some of like the most shit played because like Bushiware would make one mechanic and then make another mechanic the next time it gets support without supporting the previous mechanic. And that's what I basically make this deck to do. It's basically to use a mass majority of the mechanics that Megacolony is given, try to make synergy into it all together, and actually do some pretty decent stuff with it. So like cradle marker for a prime example, which is these are my custom cradle markers as you can see. But anyway, so the problem with the cradle marker mechanic is that if your opponent doesn't really have nothing to put cradle markers on, the mechanic kind of fizzles. Well, I'm also using the mill mechanic as an alternative and as another way to keep pressure on your opponent. So you're basically keeping pressure on your opponent by using cradle markers, by using the Ghidorah stride, and also by using the mill mechanic. So with all that being said, let's actually get this started and let's not waste any more time. Alright, so for your grade 0 lineup, it's gonna be pretty simple. This is obviously your starter does starter things. We're gonna be doing 4 heal triggers. They're like the Heal Guardians. You already know like everybody's using these. I think the only clan that's not really using Heal Guardians is probably Spike Brothers if they're using like the Dully engine. But outside of that, like 90% of the time everybody's gonna be using Heal Guardians. You should already know what they do, but like to give a clarification, if you're not at grade 3 and you use a Heal Guardian, you can either give your Vanguard 10k or minus 2 criticals to one of your opponent's units. Kind of wish we had these during Riviera era, but moving on. Next up, we got 4 of the stride criticals. Pretty standard, a lot better than using like Dorcas. No offense to Dorcas. And then like for our Sentinels, we're running 2 Sentinel criticals and 2 draw PGs. Now I was originally doing like 4 of the Sentinel crit, but then I also realized like we are going to be going against the over trigger, and honestly having more options of using PGs will definitely be there and to definitely do that and definitely to defend against the over triggers. Alright, then we're gonna come up with the most controversial thing about the deck. We're running 3 fronts. And this is the one that gets plus 5k shield to the already 15k shield of your opponents at grade 3. The reason why I'm running these is because I realized that Megacolony wasn't really hitting that hard, and I'd rather have like as much attack power as possible so it can at least put on some pressure, like power-wise, to your opponent, instead of trying to rely just on stalling the game. And then last but not least, we're using this particular heal over trigger. In my personal opinion, I feel like that this is like the best over trigger regardless, as far as premium format goes. Now when it comes to like, let's say, you know, standard format, obviously whatever nation you're using, that you're going to be using that particular over trigger. But this one gives a million to 2 particular units, so that's the reason why I like using it. And seeing that we don't really have any extra attacks, might as well try to force PGs out your opponent as much as possible. So yeah, that's why I'm running this one instead of like the Stoichia one. Stoichia one is cool because it also gives like 10k to the front row. It also gives like 10k to the front row, extra criticals and all the other stuff though. But honestly, this one's a lot better and it's a lot cheaper. I mean, this is literal cents, while the Stoichia one is like $14-15 I think at the moment. And honestly, I want to say this is a little bit more cost efficient for me too, because I run multiple like zoo decks. I run all 3 the zoo decks. There's no reason for me to be buying like 8 of the Stoichia triggers. So yeah, overall better for cost and everything else like that. But that's just a grade 0 lineup. Alright, now on to the grade 1s. Alright, the most important card that comes out of all of this is going to be Brilliant Blister. We're going to be running 3 of the new one and 1 of the old one. Now, if you have a meta where 90% of the people are running a restand in Vanguard, take one of the new ones out and put like another copy of this one. But reason being is, and this is the reason why I'm running the Cradle Marker engine, to search these out, these are so good because like when you use it defensive wise after your opponent's Vanguard is at rest, of course, Soul Blast one, discard a card, and you're able to choose one of your opponent's units rested, and it cannot be restood in any given time from any card effects or anything else like that. So that's why I like this card a lot. It definitely helps pressure, especially against like XL decks and XL clans and any clan that does multiple attacks and all this other stuff. And you already remember with this dude, man, this dude's like an OG. Whenever you place on the Guardian Circle, you choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and it cannot restand. So yeah, going against stuff like Overlord and stuff like that constantly restands, most definitely like this is the card to go to. That's why I was all like, yo, the Cradle Marker mechanic does wonders when it comes to like searching out for stuff, because you'll search out for this and you'll be ready to have a defensive play to your opponent. So I guess like in a way this card makes like Megacolony a pretty decent mid-range deck, which is kind of sort of what I was actually going for when this when I was making this thing. Next up is High Class Moth. Obviously your countercharger and whatnot, and it also recovers a card from your drop zone. So more likely you want to get one of your grade 3s or one of the Brilliant Blisters will definitely help out. Honestly, having 4 be too clingy and having 2 will obviously do it very injustice. So yeah, that's why I'm doing like 3 of that card in particular. Next up, we're running 2 Turbulent Signals and 2 Moisty Roros. This is also Cradle Marker play, but he's also mill play. So starting off with Turbulence, you basically retire him. You counterblast one to retire him. Your opponent mills a top card, and whatever grade that card is, you put that many Cradle Markers on units that don't have Cradle Markers. So if they mill a grade 2, you put like 2 Cradle Markers on 2 different units. 3, 4, whatever, whatever grade it is, you basically do it. Now you're maybe wondering, well, what if they hit a 0? You won't be able to put any Cradle Markers on anything. That is going to be the most interesting thing. You want to know why? Because now that everybody's running the Hill Guardians, which guess what? They are grade 3s. Hill Guardian, remember, Hill Guardians are grade 3s. So you're not going to be having a 1 out of like what, 16 chance of hitting like a grade 0. Is going to be more of a 1 out of 12 chance of hitting a grade 0. So you're going to be rarely hitting a grade 0s though, but if you do, I mean, that kind of sucks, but still, it's still pretty worth it regardless. And then you already know, man, mostly Railroad comes in handy because she can sack herself to pop a card that has a cradle marker. You call a card with that same grade, and of course the cradle marker will go off, where you search a card with the same grade as your Megacolony unit and whatnot. And then last but not least, I was thinking of running this at 2, but I think 1 would be pretty interesting. Like I said, we can search all of this out. So this is Brony Jerk. On play, Soul Blast 1, mill the top card of your opponent's deck. You get 6k, and if the card is a grade 1 or higher, you countercharge 1. I mean, not countercharge, soul charge 1. And then when you attack, when this boosts, you can discard a card and force your opponent to discard a card, which actually comes in handy late game, especially when your opponents have 5 damage and they have like less than 3 cards in their hand. Oh, you now have 2 cards left in hand. Or think about like if they have 2 cards and they have like a PG, you're all like, yeah, get rid of that PG. Unless it's like the new PG where like if they have 1 or less card in hand, they don't have to discard, then it kind of sucks though. But hardly anybody's really running that PG in premium format anyway. So overall, to the recap, 4 Brilliant Blisters, 3 new ones, 1 old one. Replace one of the new ones if your play group has multiple restanding vanguards. 2 Turbulence, 2 Mostly Railroad, 3 High Class Moth, and 1 Brony Jerk. Alright, now let's go on to the grade 2s. Now originally I was like hoping that all my grade 2s could have like some type of draw engine, but then I also realized that some of these also need some utility, so that's the reason why I decided not to do so. So starting with the ones that has the draw engine, we're running 3 Elite Giraffe and 3 Stamping Red. And 3 Stamping Red. Alright, so Stamping Red on place on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. You counterblast 1 and you put a cradle marker on a unit that doesn't have a cradle marker. But if you can't, you get to draw a card. And both on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, when she attacks, she gets plus 6k if your opponent has a unit with a cradle marker on it. Definitely comes in handy. And then like Elite Giraffe, when he attacks, you counterblast 1 and you draw a card if your opponent has 1 or less rearguard. And then he gains plus 5k for each rested rearguard your opponent has. And then anything in the same column as this particular unit cannot intercept. So it's definitely good going against other Protect clans and going against, like, let's say Force clans. XL clans, depending on which one you're going against, you're going to be either slightly benefiting from that effect or not using that effect at all, but that's okay. You still have ways to prevent your opponent from intercepting anyway. So yeah, these are definitely draw engines, and they're also like and they also deal pretty much good power depending on how many rear guards is on your opponent's side of the field. And then you also have 3 of my boy Machining Armor Beetle. You can rest 1 other rear guard and give it plus 6k to the end of the turn. And when it's at rest, anything in the same column can't intercept or boost, which is actually pretty good. And this also at least gives you something to use if you're using Turbulence. Because like Turbulence, you can basically play Turbulence rest it using this skill, get plus 6k, then pay to counterblast 1 to retire. And even if your opponent mills a grade 0, you at least got the 6k easily from Armor Beetle, and you also cleared the field as well, so like your field isn't clogged up and whatnot. Last but not least, we're playing 2 Megacolony Lancers, just for resource purposes. Seeing that we do Soul Blast quite often in this deck, we do need to put stuff into the Soul and whatnot, and this will basically be like the best bet, so we're running 2 of them. On attack, put something into the Soul, gains plus 2k for each rested rear guard on your opponent's side of the field, and your opponent can't intercept at all, which is actually pretty good. I mean, he's more likely not going to get the attack power that high unless you're going against XL, which then it'll actually do pretty good. So overall, we're running 6 different cards that can draw, and basically everybody has a way to gain power. So yeah, our grade 2 game is actually pretty decent compared to, like, let's say a year ago when the grade 2 game was actually pretty absent. Alright, so last but not least, we're going to be going into the grade 3s. Our main grade 3 is going to be my boy Gunning Colio. Basically, on place, your opponent mills a card, and it gains 5k and +1 drive. But if the card that was milled was a grade 3, which, let's be real, a lot of people are grade 3 heavy right now, then instead of getting 5k in another drive, you get another 10k in another drive. So if it's a grade 3 or higher, you're now able to do quad drive with +15 until the end of the turn. And then it also has another ability which you're hardly going to use, but it's still worth using. Basically, you Soul Blast a grade 3. Your opponent mills a card, and to the end of that turn, your opponent can't call cards with that same grade from their hand to the Guardian Circle. So if they milled a grade 1, they can't call grade 1s from the hand to the Guardian Circle until the end of your turn, which will actually benefit a lot, especially if it's like a grade 0 that you did. Like, that's the one time you really need a grade 0 to hit, but that's just me. And then you also have my boy Comatooth. You don't really use the on-ride ability that often though, but if you do, once somebody rides on top of them, then your opponent discards a card, and your Vanguard gets 5k for each of that card's grade. This is actually pretty good because it's used on both Vanguard and Rear Guard. So when it attacks, it counterblast, Soul Blast, it gains +10k, and your opponent mills a top card of their deck. If it's a grade 1 or higher, it gets +1 critical. So it definitely puts on a lot of pressure, especially when you call them with Empress Ghidorah. And then last but not least, for the main deck, we're running 3 of the new Intimidating Dune Darkface. On plays, discard a card, put a creative marker on a card, and when it attacks, counterblast 1, retire unit with a creative marker on it, and then you get 5k for each of that card's grade, which is actually pretty good. Again, you can search it out with Empress Ghidorah, get more stuff to it, and you can put cradle markers on your opponent's stuff, so that's actually pretty good at the end of the day. I definitely see this card seeing a little bit more play, but that's just me. So overall, for a recap, 3 Gunning Colio, 3 Comatooth, and 3 Intimidating Dune Darkface V series. All of these basically like the 3 amigos, I guess, if you really think about it. But anyway, that's enough for the main deck. Let's actually go on to our extra deck. Our extra deck thing is going to be pretty simple. Let's start out with the G Guardians. This is subject to change, but we're going to be running 1 Air Elemental Ractone. On place, discard a card, draw a card. It's kind of lackluster though, but I'm using this for now. More likely we'll probably change this to whichever is the Crate Elemental one that allows you to what is it? You discard and it gains plus 5k shield for every 2 cards in your opponent's hand. Maybe more likely it'll change to that, but I can't find it in my bulk for some reason. So that's just me. Then we're running one Relish Lady. Your opponent's Vanguard has to attack, and once it does, you force your opponent to you force your opponent to rest 2 cards. They have the choice if they want to or not, and if they can't rest 2 cards, you draw 1, countercharge, soul charge. This card is kind of mad because but at the same time, it does flip over like another G Guardian from face down, so I guess it's okay. But I just don't like the fact that it doesn't really give any shield. And then now we have Mutant Deity Fertilication Griceforth. Again, this is another one that your opponent's Vanguard has to attack in order to use it. You counterblast 1, rest every single card in your opponent's back row, and you gain 5. This gains 5k shield for every 2 resting units, that's including Vanguard, on your opponent's field at that particular time. So again, this is kind of trash, especially against like XL clans. But I don't like the fact that you can only activate it when your opponent's Vanguard attacks. I think that's complete and utter bullshit, but that's just me. And then of course, even though this is kind of ass too, it's basically like our best G Guardian. What is this? Morphesian. So you get 10k shield, but it only happens when your opponent has 2 or less if they only have 2 or less standing like rear guards. So if they have like 3 rear guards that are still standing when you attack, you don't get the 10k shield. But as long as it's 2 or less standing, then you get the 10k shield, which again, it's too situational. I think it's completely another bullshit, especially when you're going against XL. But let's be real, getting extra rear guard circles didn't exist when this card came out, so it's a little bit understandable. But hopefully, like, Premium Collection 2022 fixes the G Guardian situation. All right, and then as far as main units strides is going to be using, you're going to be using 3 Overwhelm, 4 Empress Ghidorah. You're going to be using 1 Depener. She's basically just going to be flip fodder. You're going to be using the GB8. And then you're going to be using 1 Lawless, and then of course 1 Zoa. Alright, so basically you're going to be using these 2 the most. I mean, let's be real on that. So Overwhelm is you counterblast 1, you draw cards equal to the number of rested rear guards in your opponent's field. If it's 1 or less, she gets plus 10k, plus 1 critical, and then plus 1 drive. Wait. I don't think she gets any power. Let me look at this again real quick. Yeah, she doesn't get any power. My bad. I'll spread misinformation. Anyway, so she gets plus 1 critical and plus 1 drive. And at GB3, she has Dark Device, which means that if everything in that column that she's in is rested, she gets the power to 2k to everybody on your side of the field for every face down card in your opponent's damage zone, which is kind of sort of good and not really. But then again, it also has to do with the time that this card came out. This did come out with the original Ghidorah, so it kind of makes sense that it has that particular type of ability. Then you have Empress Ghidorah, basically our best stride right now, and possibly might get banned because of Order Megacolony. But anyway, counterblast 1, all your opponent's Vanguard and rear guards cannot restand, and they can only call stuff from hand until the end of the turn. The only thing that gets through this is Messiah, because when they superior call it at lock. So like when it's at lock, it's not really considered a unit, so it kind of bypasses this when you really think about it. But then again, not too many people's really running Messiah, so you're not really going to see it that often. But when it does, just don't be surprised. And then when it attacks, you Soul Blast one. You call a grade 3 from your deck, and then it gets plus 10k to the end of the turn. Deafener, you're not really going to use this. This is just going to be flip fodder for either of these two. But if you want to, she on attack, you counterblast one, and then your opponent is forced to flip 3 cards from their G zone face up. And for every one that doesn't have a shield, your opponent, you get plus 15k to your front row. Again, this is trash because it conflicts with this, and your opponent just gonna flip over G Guardians. So I mean, it's fucking garbage. Let's just be real on that. GB8 on place, all your opponent's units on the field, both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, loses auto. They can't intercept, and everything on your field gets plus 5k for each rested card in your opponent's field. And then last but not least, you also have Lawless, which is counterblast 2. Discard a card. Your opponent can't call anything to the field. Again, Messiah can get over it pretty easy because they get through lock. That's the only because they're calling stuff from lock, they bypass this pretty easily. So again, not like the best, not the worst. And everybody remembers what Zola does. On place, counterblast 2, draw 2, or is it draw 1? I forgot. Was it draw 2 or draw 1? Oh, it's draw 1. Call a card from your hand. It gets 99,999 attack power. And if the card is successfully hits, your opponent auto loses. Doesn't matter if they're at 1 or 0 damage. So that's about the deck list right there. Thank you for looking at my episode Gourmet Shit. See you guys next time. I don't know what the next deck profile is. But if I don't do like these in real life ones, I basically don't have the cards in real life. So with all that being said, my name is Mr. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Jones Rafa, signing out.